to a little piece of Wales in the United Arab Emirates. We're joined for the third in a series of panel discussions here at World Expo 2020. And this one is about the industry known as FinTech and InsureTech. You've heard of green tech, sport tech, ad tech. This is another tech. But it's an extraordinary industry and one that we're very proud to have in Wales as a centerpiece of excellence. An industry that's apparently worth some $2.3 billion that in 2020 had funding that was about $7 billion in investment, mainly because the CAGR of the industry, the compound annual growth rate, is expected to be about 48% between 2022 and 2028. And in 2021, the top 15 insurtech companies of the world combined received some $16 billion in funding. This is an industry to watch. And we're joined by an exceptional panel, I think mostly Welsh. No, maybe a couple that are not, but we're a very diverse and inclusive nation, so we're delighted to have those that aren't. And I'm going to start by introducing Sarah to us, who is the Chief Executive of FinTech Wales.
That's correct.
Sarah, tell us a little bit about FinTech Wales and about you.
Well, FinTech Wales is all about galvanising the ecosystem, the FinTech ecosystem. And as I said, what has evolved over the last couple of years is this industry called FinTech. It is the marriage of technology delivering financial solutions. And FinTech Wales' job is to establish Wales as globally recognised as excellent in this market. We have a thriving FinTech market in Wales, and we do that by making sure that we have all the right components. So the cluster in Wales is absolutely critical to 4 key components. We're very lucky to have skills and talent. We've got brilliant HE, university provision. We've got funding and investment. The Dev Bank of Wales is actually the 3rd largest investor in the UK. We also have a great ecosystem and something that we're galvanising at FinTech Wales even more with the members we have, many of which are here today. And then lastly, my job, which is the best part of my job, is to talk about the brilliant companies we have, promote the companies and promote Wales as the place to come and seed your FinTech, scale your FinTech, expand your FinTech, IPO your FinTech, FTSE your FinTech.
Nice. What a lovely way to put all of that. Expand, grow, and then FTSE your FinTech. Lovely. Let's start, Russell, down this end. You're with a household name, but a component of it called Admiral Pioneer. Tell us about you and tell us about that.
That's right. So I'm the COO of a new business called Admiral Pioneer. And Admiral Pioneer is part of the Admiral Group. Admiral Group is a real Welsh success story. So just over 30 years old, very much focused on motor and home insurance, and has been a tremendous success since that time. And in fact, last week we just passed our 5 millionth vehicle insured. So
you say 5 million?
5 millionth vehicle insured. And very proudly based in Cardiff, but employs across South Wales and increasingly international as well. So employing over 11,000 people now. So.
Again, 11,000 people? No wonder you've reached 5 million cars. And anybody in the audience insured by Admiral? Look at that.
Thank you.
Look at the market share in the audience.
Thank you for your question.
You get a great deal. And apparently you're going to get a discount as a result of you putting your arms up. That's great. Fantastic. Russell, welcome. And where do you hail from originally?
So I'm from all over, but currently live in Bristol. Maybe the wrong side of the bridge, depending on match day.
Yes, you can choose, which is great. Well, it's great to have you with us, Russell, and thank you for being the Chief Operating Officer of a company that's just done such a good job in Wales. As you know, Admiral's proud of Wales and Wales is proud of Admiral. Eamon, welcome.
Hi.
Tell us all about you.
Sure. So my name's Eamon Tuhami. I am an investor and an entrepreneur. Spent the last 20 years living in London, but originally come from Cardiff. So I've recently come back to Cardiff. And one of the things that's really drawn me to Cardiff is the growth of fintech and startups in general. I'm privileged to be on the board of Fintech Wales, and I'm also the deal maker for Department for International Trade. We have a program called the Global Entrepreneur Program, where we go out globally, find exciting scaling ventures and talk to them about expanding, HQing in the UK, preferably in Wales, due to the huge opportunities there.
Brilliant. Any recent deals done that you can talk about that you're proud of?
Yes, so there are a couple in the room. So ShipShape, I will be investing in, which is an amazing platform. It is search for VCs, very impressive, and a couple of other ones. And I've been genuinely surprised. So my last two businesses I ran were in Old Street, and everyone knows Old Street Silicon Roundabout, and the success and growth of that. And to come back to Wales and South Wales and Cardiff and see some of those signs that I saw 10, 12 years ago in Old Street really fills me with hope and potential for what we can do.
Brilliant. Thank you for trying to find investments in Wales. There's today has been about such vibrancy in Wales, so this is great. Liz, let's come to you. Liz, you are at WagonX.
I am. I'm head of operations at WagonX. So my job is to instill the culture. We've got a few people within our team who are just excellent. So I just want to give a shout out to them and just say thank you so much, because you guys are amazing. I know they'll be watching. But in WagonX, we're a subscription provider. So basically we put vehicles on the road using a subscription product. And that product is implemented in OAM, so we've got some really exciting news to shout about, but I can't shout about it right now, so look out.
Damn, we're going to prize it out of her before the end, do you think? No. So just explain to us, when you say you put vehicles on the road through subscription, is that a consumer or is that trade?
So so it's both actually, to be honest. So we have companies that come to us, so they have multiple vehicles on the road, and then with the consumers, so that's like you're getting a personal vehicle, so you can go through wagonx.com. But wagonx.com is actually a marketplace for vehicles. So we've got multiple suppliers that upload their vehicles onto our website. Got you. I think that word marketplace cements what you do. And where are you from originally? I'm from Cardiff. Which bit? Lanisham. Isn't that the posh bit? That's the posh bit of Cardiff, isn't it? Liz, wonderful to have you here today. We're fascinated to learn a bit more about WagonX, and particularly in this industry, in a second. Great. Sandipan, now you have a very interesting company, and if you can, you talked about when we first met, if X and Y got married, you would be the child. So it was a lovely way of describing it. I encourage you to use it. Tell us about what you do.
Okay, so I'm the founder of TropoGo. So Tropo comes from troposphere. Go is about mobility, right? The need of mobility remained constant. Initially, we used to walk, then we hired horsemen, railroad, eventually aircraft, motor vehicles, so on and so forth. But things are changing. The mode of transport is changing. What we are building now, so from when I flew from Heathrow to Dubai sometime back, I depended on ATC to take me here in a
ATC, air traffic control.
Air traffic control, yeah. On kind of take me here in a safest, cheapest, and the flight, fastest route. From hotel to here, Google Maps, Apple Maps are our best friends. So now the mode of transport are drones. Drones? Yeah, for delivery, right? Yes. The medicine delivery is happening. KFC is doing pizza delivery. In Scotland, medicine deliveries are happening. So how they need a navigation tool. That's one part. And but the insurance, no objects in the world can take off without an insurance. Yeah. Our technology helps insurance companies to insure those drones. And these are big drones, like 25,000 pounds, with carrying a payload of another 30,000 pounds. So we help insurers to give that visibility that, okay, these risks are really unseen and unheard for the insurers. We help them quantify it. So you said when we met that there were two companies. So come on. So basically, we are the love child between Google Maps and air traffic control. So
that is a pitch I have not heard before, right? I think Sandapan said to me, if air traffic control and Google Maps had a child, maybe a love child, it would be them. Absolutely wonderful description. And when you think about that part of the, I mean, what you talk about vertical levels, right? That's a very interesting part of the future. And of course, I'm sure all of you at that moment went, of course, insurance, liability, that's a very interesting future. So we've got some real future here. Now, you work with all of these people. Sarah was going to do the introduction because she knows them all very well. I mean, there's quite a collaboration going on in FinTech and InsureTech in Wales, right?
There certainly is. And I've had the privilege of coming back to Wales, working in Wales for the very first time over the last 14 months. And we had a report which was published in the UK called the Khalifa Report by Ron Khalifa. It was almost exactly a year ago, 2 days ago. And he identified Cardiff as a thriving cluster for FinTech with lots of potential. So we were in the top 10. And I think it would be reasonable to say we were in the bottom part of that top 10. Over the last 12 months, I think we have risen through those rankings considerably, not just because we are growing companies and we've been running accelerators and bringing more businesses in and gaining more investment, to the point that you made earlier, but we're also telling people a lot more about what we do. So my job, which is the easy part of it, because these guys are building the solutions, my job is to help to promote those outside Wales, outside Cardiff, across the whole of the nation, and constantly be banging that drum. But we talk about this as going towards Team GB with the lovely analogy, and we have to bring a rugby analogy into it, don't we? So my job is to be around the muddy pitches of Bonamine on a Sunday morning when it's wet and cold, and finding these brilliant businesses and helping to nurture them, helping to coach them, getting them into their sort of local teams, into the Swansea teams. Then they get, the Alan Wynne Joneses, who came from Bonamine and went in to play in Swansea, and then went on to play for Wales, and can I proudly say, led the British Lions. That's what we're about at FinTech Wales. We're about making sure we put our talent on the global stage. And North Star is to just reiterate and make sure everybody knows that we have global excellence in Wales in FinTech.
Love it. Aided and abetted by companies like Admiral, which is wonderful also to see that sort of partnership. But Admiral decided to bring about Pioneer, right? I presume also to keep pace with what was going on and to be at the heart of it. Tell us a little bit about what Pioneer does exactly and how you see things unfold.
So absolutely, we are part of the Admiral Group, but we are a separate business within that group, and we're Admiral Pioneer. We've existed for about 2 years now, so grew exclusively through COVID, which has presented its own challenges, and we're what's called a corporate venture studio. But effectively, we're a business that builds businesses. So as I talked about at the top, Admiral's been incredibly successful and is only 30 years old, but the market has moved on significantly even in that time. And we're facing into a changing market, and every sort of presentation I ever seem to give says it's a very changing market, but it really feels like it, accelerated by things like COVID. And we're seeing changes in technologies, we're seeing changing patterns in vehicle ownership, which WagonX are talking to, but also we're seeing huge changes in customer behaviours. And as such, Admiral recognises what's made it successful in the past is perhaps not what's going to make it successful in the future. And so Pioneer is one of a series of diversification plays that the group's making.
I mean, you're very forward thinking when you realise that what you're doing now may change or even change beyond what you're doing. There's I read there was about 1,500 InsureTech startups in the globe. Are you looking to find startups, a little bit close to what Sarah said, fund them, incubate them, grow them, and make them part of the Admiral Group or even beyond? Is that the plan?
We've got a really big remit, which is fantastic and a little bit daunting as well. So we've started organically growing businesses ourselves. So we grandfathered one business across called Vago into Pioneer, which had grown under the group. We've created 2 new businesses in the last 7 months. So we have a business called Coalise based out of Paris, looking at green fleet, and we're starting a business called Toolbox, which is looking at servicing the trade sector. So all sectors we kind of understand and are businesses that we're looking to grow over time. But we are absolutely recognising that we go further together. So we're looking for partnerships. We are looking to invest into startups as well as grow our own as well.
Any investments in any Welsh startups yet?
No, but we're hopefully going to have some interesting news over the next year or so.
There's so much interesting news on this panel that no one can talk about. I don't think we should let them out of the room until they tell us, right? It's just us. It's fine.
Aled, I think the other thing that Admiral has done, they have been in Wales for 30 years, but what they have actually instilled in Wales is entrepreneurialism. So the founders of Admiral, which are still very prevalent and very present and very supportive, encouraged their staff to be entrepreneurial. They encouraged businesses to spin out. And in order to get a good, vibrant ecosystem, you need other businesses to be growing and building around you. So many people listening won't realise that comparison sites were invented in Wales.
Yep.
The very first one was Confused. It was spun out of Admiral. And people left Admiral and they went to Go Compare. And then they went to Money Supermarket and Money Saving Expert. These are all Welsh companies. So what Admiral did 30 years ago, and I would suggest continues to do with the Pioneer brand, is encourage and support and promote entrepreneurialism all the time. And you will hear the founders of Admiral talking about it today. They know their market is disappearing.
Yeah.
They're facing it head on and they're doing something about it.
This concept continuously in business about self-cannibalization, that the companies that grow and innovate are not afraid to self-cannibalize. And I think the other point which you talked about earlier on today, not on the panel, is the diversity angle, both of Admiral and other parts of the industry. Your CEO at Pioneer is a woman. The CEO of Admiral is a woman. Is that by chance, or are we in Wales better at inclusivity?
Who knows? We're very proud to have them. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
We're really proud to have them. They're doing brilliant jobs. So Milena, who is the CEO of Admiral Group, Emma, who is the CEO of Admiral Pioneer, Louise O'Shea, who is the CEO of Confused.com, Julianne Haynes, who is the CEO of Principality. And then we go on from that because significant non-execs at the Development Bank of Wales, the chair at Principality is a woman. I think we've heard it on some of these panels before, and it's difficult for people listening, but the inclusivity, the collaboration, I think must go a long way for that, because people are treated and respected as individuals for the contribution they make.
You know, I hope one day we don't have to talk about it in these terms, right? That we have to raise the fact that, isn't it wonderful that diverse, you know, let's make it part of normal business practice. So delighted to hear that that's coming on. Somewhat of a segue, Liz, you're in this industry.
Yeah.
When you think about WagonX's future and about the way it's treating the market, where's WagonX going? What are you trying to solve?
So the problem we're trying to solve is vehicle ownership. We have noticed that obviously there's a gap in the market. People are taking vehicle on lease, but there's nothing in between the lease and the rental. So subscription fits right in between there. What we're finding is try before you buy. With EVs becoming more popular now, people want to know, how's this going to fit in with my life? How's this vehicle going to complicate things? Because that's the initial thought before you go and buy an EV. Well, I've got to charge it here, there. So that's where we're sitting, in the middle of that. And yeah, we're finding that a lot of people are going on then to buy the vehicle because they can see it, use it, and fit it into their lives.
So, I mean, what you're talking about is a change in consumer behavior.
Yeah.
What you're dealing with is a change in consumer behavior. I was asked the question the other week, it was here, actually. Is technology driving the change, or is the behavior driving the change? Eamon? Sorry. I was going to ask you, but then I went straight to Eamon. I'll come back to you, Russell.
I think it's a bit of both. I think, the availability of technology is obviously more prevalent than it ever has. We've all got supercomputers effectively in our pockets, our mobile phones. But I think also there is a willingness, and maybe the pandemic has accelerated that.
Yes.
Some examples, we've definitely seen that in medtech, not just fintech. And I only need to look at my mum, who lives in Lanarkshire, and she is looking at a car subscription service. She doesn't want to buy a car. She goes to the shop. We've got Yoello in the audience who built a great platform to make payments easy. She uses that to pay when we're out on restaurants. And you talked to me a couple of years ago, would my mum ever do those things?
Yeah.
I'd be like, no. And, it's that, we've all heard the mum test. If your mum's doing it, like something's happening in this space. So I think for us, it's around how do we give people access, all people access to technology, not just those who can afford the best mobile phones. But I think there's definitely, from a UK point of view, as a general consumer base, almost 70 million people, we adopt technology quick. We're very brave with that. I think what that means for global scaling businesses, it's a great test bed to come here. And you only need to come to Cardiff and walk into somewhere like Tramshed to see all the different startups there, and that creates buzz. So I think it's a mixture of both that's creating a synergy, so to speak.
There's a phrase, right? The easiest product wins, and I think that's becoming part of people's design thoughts. But it's not just about the product, right? It's about the way we blend now. I mean, for insurance, Russell, the way car usage is changing is I presume, partly at the heart of your industry, plus the ability for AI and dynamic information that's real time. This is what's driving the change, or part of it.
I think certainly part of it. I mean, for us in Pioneer, it all starts with the customer. The insurance is just a product. The tech is an enabler. It all starts with the customer's need, and I totally agree with Eamon. We've seen, I think, a lot of misconceptions have been burst during lockdown. I think there was this view that grey-haired people don't use technology. It's not true. It's just you've got to make it easy for them to do it and make it relevant to their lives, and that's really where we start from with everything in Pioneer, is saying who are our customers, what are the problems they're facing, how can we be relevant in their lives? And that drives, I think, trends we're seeing towards subscription-based models. Subscription is a part of all of our lives. If you actually totted up your subscription payments every month, I think you'd be surprised how much goes out and how important it is in our lives. But there's also things like embedded insurance we see now. So our product becoming embedded at the point of sale, that seems absolutely a customer trend. I think.
Tell me what that means.
So I think in the past, what would happen is you would, you'd buy your car, get really excited. That's what you've really been focusing on, and then you'd spend, hours, days, increasingly with comparison sites, less time searching for insurance. And at best, it's a grudge purchase. It's an enabler for you to do it, and it feels very out of context. And so therefore, you tend to look at things like price first, as opposed to the quality of your cover. What I think we're seeing now is the rise of embedded insurance, so that when you subscribe your vehicle, insurance is offered at the point of sale. Right. When you buy your expensive tool.
So ease of use.
It's ease of purchase. And it's within context. Yeah. And that's, I think, we'd all recognise that in ourselves, that it's when you're enjoying buying the vehicle, you want to probably take your warranty, you probably want to pay for your insurance, do it all at once and get it done. If you can make it all in one payment, awesome.
We could talk a lot as you. There's a stat that I read the other day, which is just mind-blowing, that 60% of smartphone usage happens behind the wheel. And that was based, I think, on ZenDrive as a mobile app. Well, you're giving quite a bit of information about how you drive. Have we ventured into that moment yet where your level of insurance, your cost of insurance relates to how you drive? Well, there was 4 people wanted to answer. Straight away. What did I say?
So with WagonX, we offer insurance in the checkout, so it's embedded.
Insurance in the?
In the checkout, it's embedded.
In the checkout?
Yeah, so when you go through the checkout, you have the option to take out insurance. So that insurance is personal lines insurance, which is based on your driving history. What we find is in the past that you go onto like a fleet insurance, for example, so everyone pays the same price, but the beauty about it being personal lines insurance is, like Eamon's insurance could be like £20, mine could be £50. Sandy Pan, what's your driving like? Is it good or bad? In between, £100. So that's the beauty of it, I think. So having embedded insurance, we find that the majority of customers who go through the checkout, for the ease of it, will just add on the insurance because they've already added all their information here. So on the insurance page, it's just confirming, you know, no claims discounts, for example, how many have you got, and just the other aspects that would impact the price. And then quote, click of a button, you get a quote, and then, yeah, they just add it onto the checkout then because it's the ease, the simplicity of it.
I think what's interesting about this ecosystem, and I didn't really see it as much in London or Old Street, is it's very collaborative. So we work, you know, not just with the startups, but we work, you know, FinTech Wales, for example, talking to Admiral Pioneer and talk about the challenges that they've got. So in our first accelerator we ran, we had Zincover, which was an embedded insurance product. On the new Foundry program we've got running at the moment, we've got a GAM International, and they're offering people who are unbanked loan services. And you might think, okay, that's kind of doesn't sound too great. However, these are micro loans at very low value. They are monthly repayments, so the entirety of the loan, and the repayment rates are 99.7%.
Wow.
Which is phenomenal. So what we can do is we can actually close the development gap by collaborating with established businesses with large distribution channels, and at the same time emerging amazing products that need those distribution channels. So it's a perfect marriage, as it were.
Talk about empowering the customer as well. I mean, that's, as you say, it starts with the customer, but the power. So did you want to add anything to this moment? I want to go to the love child of ATC and Google.
Yeah, sorry, being in between the love child is quite interesting. I think the other thing, we've talked about the pandemic, but I think the thing we've learned about the pandemic is, you know, how often do we actually use our cars? You know, the pandemic obviously grounded people and left them parked on the drive or on the road or in the garage or whatever you do, but you actually monitor how much you drive your car. And it's a very, very low usage. I think it's something like 20% of the cars. So, you know, the idea of these new services that only charge you when you're using them, when you are getting value, it's that flexibility. And to Eamon's point, you know, with the introduction of the smartphone in 2010 and the ability to put apps on your phone, you almost just don't leave home without these things anymore. So the movement from music on your phone, everything else into the world of finance and to financial products was a very natural move. Finance was most probably slow to come into that market, but it's also a market that's heavily regulated. So let's not underestimate all of these people who are bringing products to market are highly trusted because they are highly regulated. Yeah. So building that trust with the consumer, so the behavioural part that you say is quite interesting.
You mentioned the word regulation there, and it immediately makes us move to Sandipan, right? A piece of, we move from the ground to slightly above the ground, right? 30 feet to 3,000 feet is currently seeking regulation standards. And I'm sure many of you in the audience suddenly went, of course things need to be insured, of course liabilities need to be met. So tell us what you're trying to do, and is it working?
Yes, so we are basically, when we launched, we took the reference from the motor industry. Like, motor started with the annual cover, and they are going into using telematics and stuff. They are going into pay as you use. But for drones, when it started in India, we started with the pay as you fly. So basically, we wanted that data, that, you know, how user behavior is, where you are flying, so on and so forth. And eventually, when we started, it was very, very expensive, right? But within 15 months, so basically it was like 100,000 INR was an annual cover, whereas the hourly cover was around 1,600 INR. Now we have because of the data what we have got, we got down that annual cover into $4,000. So that's the power part. Now, when it comes to the drones, there is three things, right? One is the standards, they are here. There is the regulation, they are here, and technology, they are here. So all these things has to come together to really the adoption to happen, right? And insurers, they have years of experience in underwriting aircraft, which is basically the aviation product. They have decades of experience in terms of underwriting the motor products. But what happens in between? So that's where we play in. That's the data part. There is a behavioral aspect of it. There is a mechanics or basically the behavior of the machine and the man behind the machine.
So if you look at Waze or Google products that help us reach our destinations, right? Waze is built on a crowdsourced collaboration about traffic. Are the drone operators willing to provide information to each other to create more safety in the air?
So it's not only for drones, right? So there is always a trust deficit, if I may say so, in between the insurer and the insuree. What happens if the insurer and insuree sees the same score? That, okay, I'm flying here today, this is my risk score, it's between say 50 to 60. Now, insurer is seeing it as to price their premium, and the drone pilots, they're seeing it to price their projects. So we have tried to bridge that gap in that way. So we build the trust as well as we use that data for pricing as both sides, for premium as well as on the project. So that's how we have tried to solve the problem.
Interesting. You actually answered my question slightly differently, which is fine, because that was a much more interesting answer than my question. I'll come at it just one more time, just of interest. Operators of drones or automated flying machines, do they share information?
Not yet, but eventually it will. So there are upper airspace management systems, which is air traffic control, and there is low altitude aerial traffic management, which is UTM. Eventually, these two systems will talk to each other. That's where the data sharing will happen.
And will you in any way augment that, or do you wish to receive that?
We will be enabling UTM systems, for example, the ATC of low altitude, with the data to have man-unmanned deconflictions happening. So we will be the data provider for a more safe flight within 30 to 3,000 feet.
Right. And I mean, for the insurers, of course, drones represent a wonderful opportunity to do unmanned liability inspection, accident inspection, property inspection, crash inspection. It's kind of interestingly wrapped together, right?
And that gives a lot of insight, because we also, when we started, it was more of a unseen risk for us. We started getting 100+ real-time variables putting in the platform, including your weather, satellite positions, real-time wind speed, the ground risk, whether there are military and defense organizations are there or not, telecom towers, so on and so forth. Then understand what is the probability of crash there. So we get that data. So it's a patented algorithm what we have built in to calculate risk real time, anywhere, everywhere.
So dynamic.
Yes, yeah.
Sarah, open banking, right? FinTech, InsureTech, the way we monetize. The theme of today has been around e-mobility. So we've already begun to hear what's changing, if you will, in terms of how we go to market. What does the future look like?
Well, if I could predict the future, I might not be sitting on this panel. However, 2013, when the then Chancellor, George Osborne, said he wanted to open up the banking sector and encourage challengers in the market, what he ostensibly was doing was, in fact, opening up with open banking. It's actually something called PSD2, some very complex payment legislation. But what he was doing was sort of like Ordnance Survey had done with maps, was giving it to people to come up with solutions that made sense to the whole generation. And it really is across the generations, because and I was privileged to be one of those very early entrants into that challenger market, bringing a new offering into the marketplace through that legislative change, and with the smartphone and with the adoption of apps and with the trust that's built and with people out there in the market testing your products and actually promoting your products, you're democratizing the access and the access to all. And this is one of the other things personally that I'm terribly proud about, because these are now products that anybody can make access to. I mean, another Welsh company is called Wealthify. You can start investing as an individual for £1. Previously you used to have to go to financial advisors. These things are now on apps in your phone. So it's making money management much more available to all. We're talking about the changing in how credit scoring and credit rating is done. Very old-fashioned ways were very limited, but there are people out there who don't own homes anymore, they don't own cars anymore. How do you actually credit score these people? So that collection of data, that opening up of banking, is one, democratizing it, making it more widely available for all. You could say it's also having its challenges because it's potentially closing the branches. It's taking the banking into a digital space, and there are still people for which cash is still very, very important. But overall, the movement is that it's opened up this data, and now we've got so many different things that we can do with it. We can have real-time insurance. We can fill our cars up in the petrol station. We don't have to get out of the car. We've paid for it before we've left. It's all being done sort of in a very secure way by lots of very innovative, and we're privileged to see them coming through the FinTech Wales Foundry, innovative companies making money management more democratized, available to all, and more creative, and solving people's sort of daily lives and daily challenges.
Following on from that, this concept of data, and of course the used phrase big data is controlled by artificial intelligence. Eamon, I'm presuming that this is having a profound effect on this industry, the whole concept of AI and the way that natural and big data is being handled.
I think it is and it isn't.
Interesting.
So I think it is in terms of AI being used on top of data to make more intelligent decisions, to offer products like Wealthify. Instead of going to a human investment broker, you're going using AI algorithms to do that. You only need to look at someone like Nomura, deploying AI across what they do. But I think there's a big difference from where the data's held. So I think historically we've always been, I worked for Experian for 9 years, who's one of the world's biggest holders of data. Yeah. And I think we have very good regulations and structures around controlling data that in lots of cases empowers consumers as well. And I think it's ultimately what you want to get to is that trust point of view. So whether you're a drone pilot and you understand that you're going to get cheaper insurance if you give data across, or I'm using something like we've got a platform here called Quote On Site that if I'm using it, I can actually benchmark my quotes against the industry average, so I know whether my prices are high or low, or whether it's a mobile phone and you've got you understand if I give data away, I get something back. So I think it's about being transparent with customers, and I think we all see these doomsday predictions about AI, and we talked earlier about a movie and something called Skynet and whatnot. I think it's around how do we find that right balance, and that balance is true in everything, not just AI.
Are we dehumanizing things?
You're going to always have that human element, aren't you, with whatever you're doing. So in subscription, for example, we still have people who speak to the customers because we've got a chat box, for example, on the website, because customers do want to still speak to someone.
But if it's a chat bot, that's not a human.
Sorry, not a chat bot. We integrate with the chat bot. It's an actual person.
You've got it, right.
Yeah, okay. It's an actual person messaging them back and speaking to the customers. Right. So And what we find is there is a majority of people who would love to get things done and not speak to anyone, but there's still some people who just want that one-to-one connection with people, and it's about having that balance there, being able to cater for your audience, I guess.
You're nodding, Russell. Is that something that you've noticed?
Yeah, I think people want to deal with people when they want to deal with people, and when they don't, they don't. And it's as simple as that. And I think we've all sat there and filled in forms, and we're being asked for the same information repeatedly from the same companies, and it drives you mad. And you just sit there and go, you know, when you de-rage, you think, what are they thinking behind here? You know, we want to, as consumers, we want to give our information once to a trusted source, have it make life easier for us later on in the process. So, you know, I agree that there are processes that should be automated where possible, you know, and it's about your point, Eamon, about if I give data, I have to see value in it. And if value is I don't have to re-enter their data, I'm happy to give it to a trusted partner. But when I want to speak to somebody, I want to speak to somebody. And I'd much rather that our business is focused on delighting the customers at the points that matter, rather than that we're spending a lot of time mechanizing things that open data and things like that can solve. So it's about, you know, applying humans where humans add best value.
I think
Yeah.
Do you know that?
very good point. So in you know, if we use a different lens there, right? So when we are interacting with human to human, that's emotional intelligence. When you are interacting machine to machine, that's become artificial intelligence, right?
Yes.
So if we can split the what side of the thing, so if in terms of pricing, I'd love to, you know, work towards the emotional intelligence part, machine intelligence part of it, machine to machine interaction. We are consuming data from various angles, right? When it comes to the claim, probably that's the way where we talk about the emotional. When you talk to the people and say, okay, are you okay? You know, first of all, let me, you know, are you safe? Then you do things. So use the various ways of looking at intelligence. I mean, the way I say things. Yeah.
Very interesting. This year it's predicted that robo-advisors will account for 4.6 trillion under asset management. I mean, that's an extraordinary number. So at which point, let's go to a member of the audience online who wants to ask a question, so we'll stay with humans. I can see why moving to a subscription model makes sense, especially for large companies, since it gives them predictable cash flow, which they can inflate at will via direct debits and even charge extra for offering credit. That's less obvious that it's a good model for the consumer, especially those with low or regular income. What's the panel's view? Thank you for your question.
So I think there's it's about creating a win-win. So again, going back to a GAM on the Foundry program at the moment.
Sorry, did you say GAM?
A GAM, A-G-A-M, International. Yes.
Explain that.
What it means,
Yes.
the acronym, I don't know. You'd have to ask the founder, the CEO.
Okay, right.
I don't know that off by heart. Maybe I should. Yeah, they're offering, you know, a loan which is maximum length a month. You know, there are companies where you're subscribing and you can cancel at any time for no penalty. I would like to see more of that. I think, you know, you look at something, I was reading an article the other day, it was around Sky, and it's actually, you know, you can add a service in 10 minutes, but to cancel something takes a 10-hour, you know, whatever phone call. So I think as long as it's fair on both sides, and you're not being locked in without not knowing, you know, I know that my wife uses WagonX, for example, and it wasn't a 24-month contract. It was a rolling month-on-month contract. And, okay, you might have to pay for a premium for that, but you should do if you're getting a brand new car and you're going to give it back in a month's time. So again, I think, I don't know, it's very easy, I think, as consumers sometimes for us, or people, to be cynical about technology. And, you know, I think one of your questions before is technology dehumanizing? I look back in the pandemic and I think, wow, I'm so glad we had Zoom and FaceTime. 100%. And, you know, what would that be like? And I think, you know, I've got 3 young children, and one of the things I'm worried about is I don't want them to be on the Xbox or on their phone all the time. Yet I know during, you know, lockdown they were doing online learning courses. So again, I think we need to apply our human intelligence for what's right and wrong.
Yes. By the way, I have noticed that your family is using so many of the products we're talking about here, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
And you're going to use a lot after this as well. You're going to invest a lot.
No doubt.
So I thank you for that.
The assumptive close you did on me then was
But in return, we'll use your product.
there you go. So let's stay on the question from the audience member. Anybody else got any things they want to add about?
I think the other point that Eamon's saying, when you are opening up your data, especially in the financial world, and keeping track of it is really, really important. And you see that with marketplaces, and actually the regulation says that you have to reconfirm that access to data, that you want it. So if you are connecting your bank account, for example, to an accounting system, or if you are connecting it to something like a Wealthify, where you are scraping off so much percentage to invest on a regular basis, you are reconfirming that on a regular basis. So that transparency is really important. I think we cannot underestimate, when we deal with finances, just how important trust is. And it does have to be easy to switch those things off, as it does to switch them back on. I think we were hugely surprised when we bought a digital challenger bank into the palm of people's hands, how much they started checking their balances. You know, when it was available to them, they were checking their balances 10, 15 times a day. Yeah. When we put maps on there, they were working out exactly where they were going to spend all of their money. Yeah. So it gives more of the control, and I think that's the important thing that we have to realise. It's the trust, the control, and the visibility of it will help us manage our money better.
I think one thing that's interesting to add on that, from a startup, a scale-up point of view, and when we talk about ecosystems, so one of the reasons that we saw lots of early fintechs grow in Old Street is because you're right next to Bishopsgate, which is where all the big banks are, and the regulator was just around the corner. And what's interesting, I think, within Wales, and we're seeing this specifically within Cardiff, in a very, very small, you can mostly go 1 square mile, we have very big institutions, we have big banks, we have innovative startup places to interact and work. We're now having the FCA come into Cardiff as well. So as a startup, as a scale-up, I only need to walk a square block to get some of the answers I need. And if I get answers quicker around what do I need to be doing from a regulation point of view, what do I need to be doing from a market opportunity point of view, I can scale faster. Yeah. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is how can you scale in Wales quicker, and how can we help those in Wales scale outside of Wales faster? But it's all about that ecosystem, and trust is most probably the key element of that.
Yeah.
I want to come to Wales in a second. Just at this moment, is there any thoughts or questions from the audience as to where we've been so far before we go to Wales and maybe just touch on a few more of these subjects? Anybody want to ask a question in the audience here or make a comment? Ben, and I would ask you to repeat. Oh, thank you very much. Here's we need a microphone so that people online can hear you. That's great. Thank you very much indeed for the microphone.
So the insure and fintech that you've explained kind of lends itself quite a lot to mobility as a service. Has the panel got any thoughts around ticketing within that space? Around? Ticketing for other modes of transport.
Interesting.
I've got a view on ticketing. So do you mean ticketing like for events?
For trains, buses, trams, blending that into mobility?
I mean, we're starting to explore that, because I think the idea that you go from A to B on one mode of transport is increasing. You know, to look in my hometown of Bristol, we've got electric mopeds, we've got bikes. You know, there's a train service, there's buses. I think people, again, going back to that point of customer convenience, they want to be able to say, I want to go to A to B with one ticket across multiple modes of transport, and be able to deal with the complexity that presents. So if buses are late or trains are late, it's all factored in. So I think connected journeys is a really interesting point. We're starting to explore it, but it's far more complex actually when you get into it. So we're interested in it, but I don't think I have any answers in that space yet.
So we have there's a startup called Yakuba. So they were based in Lisbon, and they recently relocated their HQ to Cardiff. And what's interesting about Yakuba is they started off with a concept around how do you prevent ticket scalping for events. And then they realized actually the technology they developed could mean that you can not only book your event ticket, but you can book your hotel, you can book your travel, you can do everything on one purchase, and that can be really, really simplified from a consumer point of view. So I don't think there's anyone here or online who doesn't want an easier life. So it's about convenience. And I think what's interesting for me is, can you get to that place where I'm buying my ticket on the train to London from Cardiff, it's taking me an hour and 40, but I've got my meeting room booked, I've got the food there ready, and it's all done seamlessly in one go. So I think for me it's that interconnection, and I suppose an API is a great example of that. You know, as lots of businesses work more collaboratively together, they can actually create a super service by that combination of what they do.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ben. We'll take the microphone off you.
So there's most probably a need there just in the transportation industry to have that standard. So banking has the open banking standards so that we can integrate and we can talk to each other. When we talk about modes of transport, you know, I think those of us that use things like Trainline have realised more recently they now have got a little bit smarter with their ticketing. So they will give you some of those split travels so you can actually get the cheaper journeys without having to be an absolutely brainy mathematician to work it all out. So maybe that's what we're going to wait for in the transportation services, that open standard in which to integrate. Because when you want to integrate your scooters or your bikes or your trains with everything else, there has to be a standard way of doing that with APIs and a recognised protocol.
I think we're going to get that. So we saw that with TfL in London. Yeah. So they created an API and something like, there's a whole load of mapping products that came on the back of that. I don't know if many of you know, but DVLA, based in Swansea, we're going to be moving to no driver's license anymore, not even small credit cards. It's all going to be API driven. So what's exciting is when you have your public infrastructure service providers creating APIs, then you can have new startups being created on the back of this data explosion, this opportunity there. So it's happening. I think it's going to accelerate as well.
So I'm sure everybody knows what an API is deeply, application protocol interface, which is of course what it means. But what does it mean? I mean, so just explain. It's integrated into the system that it knows your details.
Yeah, think about it like a new motorway. And it's a motorway between one person's company and another person's company, and it's really secure, and you can drive lots of traffic between there. And we want more motorway connections. Obviously, in the digital world, not in the real world. We want a net zero reality in the real world. And traditionally, it's been software companies who've created it.
Yep.
And I think what's exciting is it's now becoming prevalent across everything we do, and I think that openness to data sharing with the right protocols really accelerates things. So I'm really excited. So we've got WagonX next to me. It's most probably in the future I'm going to be able to subscribe really quickly. I might only subscribe for like a couple of hours. The car turns up, and all the checks are done automatically with DVLA without me even having to do my driver's license, etc. Insurance is underwritten instantly, and all that is driven by these motorway, these API connections.
I know a very good company that does API testing. Should you?
but it's
I know it happens to be called Source Labs. Just by chance. Yes. Time is sort of moving on. This is wonderful, and I want to talk a little bit about Wales because it is the reason that binds us together and why we're here. Why has Wales built such a strong insurance, InsureTech and FinTech existence? What was it in the beginning?
I mean, I can't talk to what Henry and David saw in Cardiff when they established it 30 years ago, but definitely one of the things that we benefit from and continue to benefit from is the talent pool. I think it was mentioned on a panel earlier, the talent that sits in Wales is massive, and I think we've benefited from that, and part of what we feel we have to do is now contribute to that as well.
But why is the talent different in Wales? Is it?
I don't know. I'm not sure it's any different. There is a loyalty. I think somebody in another panel said that you could recruit people and they'll stay with you.
Yeah.
But part of that is about being a great employer, and Adam is a great employer. But once you do that, it goes back to trust. There's a real relationship between the employees and the employer, certainly in Admiral, and I see it in other businesses as well. So people care about the business, and they care about the business we're in. So, our customer service people, if you ever speak to them, and if you've ever had the opportunity, albeit maybe not the one you wanted, speaking to our customer service, they're fantastic. And it's not running a script, it's not a machine, it's a human speaking to a human.
Yes.
And it is what we think is the difference that makes a difference for us. So I think it's about recruiting talent, developing, nurturing, and keeping that talent is so powerful for us.
Sandipan, you're based in both India and in Wales.
Yeah. So I'm a proud Indian. Okay. So the what is exciting in Wales, right? So there's a very big common themes run between India and Wales. That is the warmth, the welcoming nature, and the talent pool, right? So it's very, very interesting the way, as a company, right, we are a very young startup. I have lived in London for many years, worked for investment banks. Here in Wales, when we started, the kind of support what we got is extraordinary, right? So it's more like now what we are building in terms of things, right? So I was talking to somebody yesterday that, we are building Google Maps, but not in Mountain View. It's in Cardiff, right? So the way we see the support, the talent is coming up, the new age technologies being from autonomous mobility, the semiconductor industry, cybersecurity, this all fits into our roadmap. And I have a ready-made talent where I can build on, keep on things here. So, it's very, very interesting to be here and really honored to be part of this ecosystem.
Brilliant, thank you. Liz?
It's the talent, isn't it, in Wales? And the kindness, the genuine people in Wales. I find, being here in Dubai is like being home in Wales. Everyone's so kind and loving. And I think in Wales, I've got an amazing team. Like, don't get me wrong, in London, Toby, our CEO, he is amazing. He's a fantastic guy. But in Wales, it's genuine, kind, loving people. And you just can't replicate that.
I think it's true, but I'm biased. Eamon, when we first met and we started talking about Wales, you compared Wales to the difficulty, for example, that an Australian company has. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the geographical benefits of Wales?
Yeah, so I think, we have amazing capabilities within Wales. We're a passionate nation. We invented the love spoon. We were down in Abu Dhabi yesterday doing a workshop with some startups, and we gave one as a prize. So we're really passionate, but I think sometimes, we may not tell people enough where Wales is and what we're doing. So typically, if I'm an Australian startup, and I reach a certain size, I know that my market is most probably outside of Australia. I need to move, and typically the question is, where do I move to? And when people think about the UK, which is a huge opportunity, people tend to think about London first. It's an amazing city. I love it. I lived there for 20 years. They don't really think about many other places. If you're medtech, you might think of Cambridge. But I think what people don't realise is Wales is only an hour and 40 on the train. And it's not just South Wales as a proximity to London. We last night we had an amazing meal, and there was a lady from Anglesey who runs a lobster business, and she was saying, do you know some of the best lobster in Europe? Where we are in Anglesey, it's actually the quickest to get to Heathrow Airport for us to expand our produce internationally. So one of the pitches when I'm talking to international companies is, yes, have a presence in London. Base your Swish maybe international office for people who jet in, jet out really quickly. But why don't you think about setting up your development house in Wales, in Cardiff, in Swansea, in Newport, employing people? And we see examples of that. So the most recent example is Starling. Starling are employing 400 people in Cardiff. It's their biggest office.
And who are they?
So Starling are one of the big neobanks in the UK.
What's a neobank?
So good question. So we have traditional banks. Most of you think about the RBSs, the Lloyds of the world. They were established. The JP Morgans, which happens to be established by a Welshman, right. These big banks were established hundreds of years ago, and they have legacy systems. They're not using APIs that we were talking about earlier. So a neobank is a bank built from scratch using amazing technology, and also has an amazing outlook to empower consumers. So Starling and what they've done is a great example of that. And what Starling did is they started off in London, but they said, okay, we need to expand. And we need to find not just call centre people, which sometimes people think about the capabilities of South Wales. We need to find real deep tech jobs. Yeah. We need to find data scientists. We need to find fraud prevention officers. And when you look at the geography of South Wales and the amazing higher education universities that we've got, when you think about the passionate talent pool that we have, we're in a natural location. So, my pitch to international companies is one for Great Britain, it's one for London, but it's also, hey, do you know that so it took us an hour and 50 to get to Abu Dhabi from Dubai yesterday. You can get to Cardiff to London in a shorter space of time. Yeah. In America, where you predominantly live, it's a commutable distance. Yes. So I think it's around playing into this super cluster strength that we have. And actually, that makes us stronger together.
I mean, the constant phrase that's been occurring today throughout all of these is collaboration, and something about the way Wales collaborates. And you're at the centre, Sarah, of building this collaboration. Is it really that noticeable?
Yeah, it really is. And there are times when, and there are people on this panel, there are people in this room that we will work with, and then we will have to disagree with. But we do that in the right way and in a very polite way, because we are contributing. And it's not just about Wales; it is about Team GB. And at the moment in fintech, Team GB is right at the forefront on the global stage. And the only way that we will really stay there is by collaborating together. And to the points that Eamon has made, when you can bring those components together, and if you think of the US and you think of their adoption and growth in banking, their centres are in New York, they're in Washington, they're in Silicon Valley. They are very dispersed compared to the City of London, where, as you said, it's a tube hop from Westminster to the FCA to the PRA to the Bank of England. And what we've done in Cardiff is we've done exactly that. So the FCA are now in Cardiff. The Welsh Government are clearly there in the centre. But the additional thing we have to London is academia. We've got Cardiff University, we've got Cardiff Met, we've got the University of South Wales, University of Trinity St David's, we've got Swansea University, and I could go on because all of the northern universities as well. But in addition to that, and the fact that someone said Wales was known as for call centres, who are the best people to know what customers want? The people who have talked to customers for 30 odd years. The reason why we have really good solutions is because this is where lots of people have come from. They've seen those problems firsthand at the coalface. Is that the right thing to say for Wales? But they have. So
at
they
the digital coalface now.
The digital coalface in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So they know what the problems are. They're very genuine. They are very hardworking. They are very collaborative, with the customer at the heart of solving those solutions.
Brilliantly said. Well, we've got time to wrap up. I want to give every one of you closing remarks, thoughts, advice, anything you want to say. Russell.
So being a relatively new entrant into the ecosystem of South Wales and Wales more generally, it's a great place to be. I have to say, having worked in London with startups, and it always feels a little bit of friction there. There's a lot going on. There's a lot, whereas one of the things I've sort of observed in being part of the ecosystem is there's a real sort of nurturing side to the startups. They all seem to celebrate each other's success. And it's something quite unique, actually. I've not seen that anywhere else. And so there is a genuine warmth, a genuine wishing of well for others. And it's just a great place to be, and a really exciting and vibrant ecosystem. And there's something quite authentic about it, something quite human about it, which is really nice. So I would encourage businesses that are looking to establish in the UK to consider Wales and look at it. We're really excited by the talent that's coming out of Wales, and more so from the entrepreneurial talent now that's seeing the opportunity to build and to grow and scale. And I think that's what's really quite heartening, is that Wales has got huge entrepreneurial talent. It shouldn't just be employed, it should be employing, and that's great to start seeing that happening.
Wonderful, thank you for all you do for Wales. Eamon.
So my one word is hoil. So it's one of my favourite Welsh words. And for those who don't know, it's motivation and energy. And I think the hoil is growing within Wales and beyond. And I think what's great is we need more of it. We need to be championing each other and what we do more, collaborating more. And I think, whether it's Sandapan from Tropico, or whether it's other people coming into the ecosystem, you can use that as fuel to accelerate what you do. And we want to accelerate the capabilities of people within Wales and beyond. So I would say to people, get involved more, support more. I think it's something that we can all contribute with, whether it's my mum using new technology, or whether it's joining a startup and thinking of a new idea. There's opportunities for everyone.
There's something going on in the sky. I'm hoping that you're somebody's tracking this. Okay, just checking. Liz.
I agree with both of what you're both saying, to be honest. I think, the collaboration in Wales is such an amazing thing. So it's so important that you guys, join us, come to Wales, come to UK, but also, build a business within Wales as well. Like, we're here to help. And if we can't help, people like Sarah are amazing. They can introduce you to people. So I would say, I agree with what everyone's saying, to be honest.
Lovely.
Great people.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, so, right now we are going through an acceleration process with Sarah and around there. So it is not the experience what we have. I really wanted to share that. It's not only the expertise and talent, the access to the market, to the multiple regions, and it's very close area, and you can do a lot of things, especially given the regulatory support, the knowledge, the banking support it has. So I don't see any reason why other startups cannot scale in Wales. So it has, it has every element which every startup need in the early stages. So come and scale in Wales.
Scale in Wales. Sarah?
And I'm going to add to Eamon's, because the hoil is really important. It was a word I didn't know 12 months ago, and I'm terribly proud to now understand what it means. But I think it comes with the hireth as well. Yeah. So the hoil, which is the energy, and the hireth, which is the welcome, is the thing that you get when you come to Wales. You've got the talent, you've got your London office an hour and a half away, you've got the beaches, you've got the mountains, you've got the diversity, inclusion, where everybody is valued. To me, it's why wouldn't you?
Repeat your last sentence, but maybe wait a second. This must be a flyover, right? Exciting flyover.
We're obviously missing something really
yes,
good.
Exactly. I want to go outside and see this.
Yeah,
Sarah, tell us your last sentence again.
So I said, for me, it's about the hoil, it's about the energy, it's about the passion, but you put it with the hireth, which is the word for home and welcome and warmth. And that combination is absolutely unique. You match that with the right government attitude, you match that with the right talent, with the ecosystem, with the ideas and the entrepreneurialism. And to me, Wales, it's an hour and a half away from London, so why wouldn't you?
Brilliant. Well, I mean, look, I'm thinking about concluding remarks, and the thing that strikes me the most is, one, the digital innovation that's going on in this sector. It's no wonder it's getting the kind of investment levels and the kind of CAGR. The second thing that strikes me is the winners will be the consumer. It's us. And the winning component, a lot of it to me, is the fact that the world becomes more frictionless, easier, as you rightly put it. And it's being driven by talent such as this and investment such as this. And it's happening on St. David's Day of all days in Wales, which is quite remarkable. So thank you as a panel for all you do for Wales, for joining us here in the UAE. It's a pleasure as the Welsh Government envoy to the United States to be here and take some of these ideas back home and make sure that the United States gets to know Wales better. So thank you for your support and for everyone that joined us online. This is Wales, Scale in Wales. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.